You are currently looking at a recording of me at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning. I hadn't slept well that night, so I certainly was in no mood to learn that someone had uploaded both mine and others' paid plugins to a public GitHub repository for the explicit purpose of unlawful redistribution, or what you might call piracy. Luckily, GitHub has a fantastic, creator-friendly process for issuing DMCA takedowns, and within 20 minutes I had filed a legal notice to get my protected works removed from the site. I also took the time to message the other plugin creators that their work had just been published without consent, just in case they themselves wanted to do anything about it. There is nothing special about this occasion. It wasn't even a significant repository, it only had a few plugins and it was only starred by one person. The sad truth is that these occasions are just boring and routine for many creators nowadays. It's not like this is optional either. If you make a habit of letting infringements go, it's widely understood that you're setting a precedent that you will not enforce your intellectual property rights. That means if you do enforce your rights one day and you get taken to court over it, the infringing party could point to that precedent and reasonably claim, they didn't enforce it for anyone else, so why would they enforce it for me? You don't want to end up there. So the price of preventing that is getting up at 7 in the morning to file miserable legal documents. This is just one part of the unspoken underbelly of indie development. So, hello everyone, I'm Dan, and let's talk about how you should approach piracy as an indie. Now, there's one thing I want to get out of the way up front. Some people demonize piracy and the people who do it. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely believe that people who break reasonable laws should feel the force of said laws, and piracy is illegal for actually good reason because you are actively withholding someone else's means while benefiting from their work, often financially. However, I don't agree with the idea that people who pirate are always doing so for immoral reasons. Some people might not have any other way of interacting with your work. They might be physically unable to compensate you for their work, no matter what they do. They might come from a country who your payment processor doesn't support. Or perhaps they literally have no money at all because they live somewhere with an impoverishing average income. These people might be fully willing to do the right thing, but might be prevented by the system from doing the right thing. This does not characterize all pirates. Some people pirate for less legitimate reasons, but I think it's a prime example of why we should treat pirates as people. Because they are people, and they can be surprisingly human motivations behind the piracy that just don't get talked about because we're too busy being angry at fictions that we made up. As with all things, I advocate for an empathetic and caring approach. With this understanding of the problem, we can start to approach techniques for dealing with piracy. Gabe Newell, pretty infamously, says it very well.
One thing that we have learned is that piracy is not a pricing issue. It's a service issue. The easiest way to stop piracy is not by putting anti-piracy technology to work. It's by giving these people a service that's better than what they're receiving from the pirates.
I very much agree with this perspective, and in fact I would generalize it. You don't fix piracy by chasing piracy. It is a symptom, not a cause. Why is that so? Surely if I file enough notices, hire enough lawyers, terrorize enough children, they'll go away and leave me be? Well, probably not. You see, piracy is a long tail issue. You can be big, bad, and scary enough to dissuade the majority from doing it. You can sue so much that it becomes your middle name, but there will always be a deeper underground, a more devoted team, a further invigorated and enraged populace. You won't win. In return for not winning, though, you will absolutely make things worse for the legitimate ones. You'll enforce draconian and frictionful anti-circumvention technology. You'll burn away all of the goodwill you have with endless stories of terror and dominion. You will impart a sour taste in the mouths of every witness. You will become the Nintendo-esque villain in the public eye. You won't win. That's why you shouldn't make a point of going out and finding these people. If it's blatant and it's obvious, then sure. If you naturally come across it, then sure. If it's really hurting you, then sure. As I mentioned before, you have to enforce your rights at a basic and reasonable level. You must set that precedent. But let the underground be underground. If bad luck doesn't catch up with them, irrelevance surely will, and you'll find that you gained so much more from ignoring them than you would gain from competing with them. All of that being said, you can take steps to reduce piracy, after all. Gabe Newell continues from the previous quote.
For example, Russia. You say, we're going to enter Russia. People say, they'll pirate everything in Russia. Russia now, outside of Germany, is our largest continental European market. The point was, the people who are telling you that Russians pirate everything are the people who wait 6 months to localize their product into Russia. It doesn't take much to make pirates a non-issue.
That leads me into my golden rule about dealing with piracy. It's real catchy. Give a shit. That's it. That's the tweet. Giving a shit comes in many forms. For example, giving a shit means not being a dick on the internet. Don't snap at people for no reason. Don't be so up yourself that you become a living knot. Recognize your humanness and recognize theirs. If you have the ability to genuinely give someone your time and your heart, they will have 100 fewer reasons to spite you. When you treat people properly, they will strive to do the right thing for you. And if they can't, they'll come to you for advice. There are good people everywhere, and you need to focus on them. Let's push on this idea. A more specific way of giving a shit would be to pay attention to where you're lacking. Is your product inaccessible in certain regions? Does it adjust for the relative income of people? Can it justify its price? Do you have good feedback mechanisms in place? Does it make people feel good? Does it make people more productive? Where do you fall short? Again, don't be up yourself. The things that humans make will inevitably be shit in places, and it is your job to reduce the quantity of shit in those places. To be transparent to a fault, this is something my products currently suffer with. They aren't maximally accessible to people globally, and they don't always justify their price. I'm clear about that, and I'm working on that. We'll talk about that later. But before that, there is a third, rather subtle and different way of giving a shit. You should give a shit about the pirates. If they're going to pirate your stuff, make your stuff worth their time to pirate. That sounds bizarre, right? We're trying to stop people from pirating, right? Well, yes and no. While it is true that you want to convince as many people as possible to get your stuff the legitimate way so you can, pay bills and not starve to death, the reality is that some people won't be convinced. If they're going to pirate, they may as well be useful pirates. I'd like you to think about WinRAR for a second. Do you know anyone who's actually bought WinRAR? If the answer is no, then you're probably most people. Buying WinRAR as an individual is a meme. It's the thing you do to impress the ladies, at least. I assume so. I'm not into women. Point is, WinRAR might be the most widespread, publicized, legitimized case of software piracy that the world has ever seen. But RARLab don't seem to care. In fact, RARLab don't seem to be out of business. Are those WinRAR ladies so flaming hot that RARLab can keep their business afloat purely on the high testosterone purchases of sad men? No, absolutely not. You know who pays for WinRAR? Businesses that absolutely cannot be caught committing software piracy at an enterprise scale. They are who pays for WinRAR. RARLab are a world-class case study in using piracy as advertisement. Really, really powerful advertisement. You get to use WinRAR effectively for free, which lets you acclimatize to its world-class functionality, archive all of your files in its proprietary RAR format, and show and tell everyone that you're using WinRAR, and show off that it's good software and worth using. The other great example that comes to mind is Photoshop, estimated by some people to be the most pirated software in the world. It's certainly the software with the highest chance of giving your computer an STI. That is a software torrent infection. Think about all of the YouTube tutorials that have been made with pirated Photoshop. Think of all of the documents saved by pirated Photoshop in file formats that are only compatible with Photoshop. Think about how Photoshop's premium and desirable status is in part maintained by piracy. We use Photoshop because everyone uses Photoshop, even the people who can't afford to use Photoshop and would benefit from some other software being standard. That applies to knockoffs and complementary products too, by the way. Photopea is not giving Photoshop a run for their money. They're just further consolidating everyone under Adobe's supreme rule by continuing to give their software legitimacy. So when I say give a shit about your pirates, this is the level of consideration you should be talking about. One point of clarification, by the way. My intention in saying this is only that you should be building products that are so good that people choose to use them, to the point that they will pirate it to continue using it should they run out of other options. I explicitly do not advocate for hostile lock-in. Holding people's data hostage in proprietary formats is a little too unclean for me to be enthusiastic about. I personally made the choice to use software like Obsidian that operate on free standard file formats, in part because it's good software, but in part because those open formats mean that my data has longevity and can be archived and revisited at any point in the future, no matter what software I'm using. But tangent aside, include piracy in your business plan, because whether you plan for it or not, it will be there. It is your custom to lose. If someone is going to pirate either way, make sure they're pirating you. There is no downside to this. You've not lost business because they were never going to pay for it. The only thing this is contingency. You have worked as hard as you can to present a compelling case for owning the software legitimately. But now you're assuming that those efforts have failed. This is what you do to recover something from that failure. This is how there are better ways of doing business than hiring teams of lawyers to give kids nightmares about litigation. So, okay, that's cool and all, but how do you put those things into practice? Well, you might have noticed by this point, but the through line is that this is just good business. If you make an honest, good product, if you listen and care, if you're doing this for more than just money, then all of this comes naturally with the territory. Short-sighted bean counters miss these basics all of the time in pursuit of profits with shallow roots. If you're not one of those people, then you don't have to worry. Just do a good job and be a good person. Let me show you what I mean. To try and be in line with these practices, I have been actively listening to your feedback. I've heard you loud and clear. My products do not deliver enough value to justify their price. They aren't accessible to everyone anymore, whether due to regional concerns, age limitations, economic realities. The list goes on. So, I'm doing something about it, and I'm publicly committing to doing something about it because I give a shit. This is my passion project. I'm working on huge, featureful updates to my plugins right now. I've invested massively in the tech stack that powers them. They've been completely refreshed and rethought from the ground up. They include some of the most cutting-edge stuff that I have ever put out. I want these products to be worth the price, so I will work day and night until you walk away wondering how on earth it's such a good deal. That is what I am going to do. But it's not just about making good deals, because frankly, that will do nothing to solve the access problem. Some people can't afford to pay for ethically priced stuff. That's a simple economic reality. The wealth of the world is unfairly distributed for reasons that breach the scope of this video. So instead of allowing that to remain, I have decided to renew my commitments to equitable access. When I launch my new products on the 8th of April, I will be introducing a brand new program aimed squarely at global developers, from Latin America to Africa to Eastern Europe to Asia. I want everyone around the world to be included in my work, because I value everyone around the world and I want to be an enabler, not a gatekeeper. People who can't afford to pay shouldn't be tasked with keeping me afloat, because they need it more than I do. We don't need equality here, we need fairness. And that will be the central theme of everything that I will talk about in April. If any of that is interesting to you, you should head over to the Studio LTOP channel, because that's where those announcements will be. Also, on top of that global access program, I'm also thinking about implementing a similar program for last-minute purchases. As I recently explained, I try to manage expectations around my products as carefully and neutrally as possible, so as to avoid making people purchase things based on time pressure and FOMO. That often means I'll be making announcements out of the blue with little introduction. Now, that can be exciting, but it can equally be frustrating, especially when you've just bought something full price in the last month and now it's been replaced with the bigger, better version that you don't have. You better have enjoyed that month's worth of purchase. Last-minute purchases are a real problem, not just because it's an insult to your users, but even in cold, unfeeling economic terms. That is a dead simple way to get people to pirate your stuff. There is no reason to snuff users like this, and from some of the responses I've seen, some people are already assuming I'm going to try and rip people off in exactly that fashion, even though that is the last thing that I want to do. So instead of continuing to run my mouth and try and talk people around to my point of view, I'm going to demonstrate it. I want to start a program where purchases made in the run-up to a major product release can be upgraded for free. Like, hypothetically, if you bought old reclass the week before new reclass drops, then you should just be able to use the new reclass. It's common sense. You buy things with the expectation you'll get some extended period of value and software support out of them. 1 week is not an extended period, so you're essentially selling people on a lie. That's exactly what this program is meant to curb. Again, you won't hear much about this program for now. I'll likely announce more concrete details when I start cycling out my legacy products and introduce the completely rebuilt ones that will replace them. I just want you to know that I'm thinking about these things like that, so that you can be more confident about buying my stuff, and so that you can feel better about it too. And finally, to circle back to the start of this video, I'm not going to be overly litigious. I'm not interested in building a lawyer machine that dispenses DMCAs like jelly beans in the sweet shop. I mean, look, I'm still going to enforce my intellectual property rights, to be clear. I am fully ready for more depressing Monday mornings spent taking down repositories of stolen code. But know that I want to be a human about it. I hold nothing against people who pirate because they are merely out of options. I understand, and I see you. All that I want is to work together and to figure out how we can do this the right way. You might be a pirate, but you're a part of the family nonetheless. I've been Dan, and I'll see you all next time. Have fun.